The purchase. The station was a maze of steel and shadows, lit by dying neon and the glow of plasma welders. Vero's Prime, the jewel of the outer rim, or so the advertisements claimed. To Jack Carter, it was nothing but a rotting carcass of a trade hub, orbiting a star in its final breaths. He moved through the crowded market corridors with his hands in his pockets, not because he was cold, but because every other person here was looking for something to steal. His boots clanged on the grated flooring as vendors hawked everything from bioengineered pets to unregistered plasma rifles. Jack wasn't here for pets or weapons. He was looking for work. Work had been scarce since he'd lost his ship. The Meridian, sleek, fast, and the only thing he'd ever loved, had been blasted into drifting slag by pirates 2 months ago. They hadn't even given him the courtesy of killing him outright. They'd just left him stranded on a mining moon with nothing but the clothes on his back. Now, he was living in cheap rentals, scrounging for cargo runs no one else wanted. His bank account was an insult, 300 credits to his name. In a place like Vero's Prime, that wouldn't buy him more than a week's worth of ration bars. That's when he heard the whisper. 2 reptilian traders leaned against a rusted support beam, their forked tongues flicking as they spoke. Jack didn't catch most of it. He didn't speak Yathran, but one phrase in common made his ears twitch. Luminari, one night only, auction. Jack slowed his pace. Luminari. He'd heard the name before, an old spacer's tale. A telepathic species from deep within the Azure Veil, supposedly extinct after a war with some hive-mind empire. The few survivors were said to be worth fortunes or trouble, usually both. He followed the voices, ducking down a narrow corridor that smelled like burnt oil and ozone. The crowd here was thinner, the lights dimmer. This was the station's underbelly, where the Threx Syndicate ran their business. A steel door guarded by 2 insectoid bruisers stood at the end of the hall. A glowing sign above it read, in jagged script, "Private auction. Entry fee, 50 credits." Jack hesitated. 50 credits was more than he could afford to waste. But something kept him moving forward. The guard scanned him with cold, multifaceted eyes before taking his payment. The door slid open with a hiss, and the smell of incense and metal washed over him. Inside, the auction looked more like a nightclub. Dim red lighting, raised platforms, and a crowd of smugglers, pirates, and mercenaries sipping glowing drinks. And in the center of it all, she stood on a small dais, wrists bound in shimmering energy cuffs. Her skin was silver, almost liquid in the way it caught the light. Her hair, long and white, shifted like strands of fiber optic cable. But it was her eyes that froze Jack in place, glowing pools of violet light, too intelligent and too afraid for this room. The announcer, a gaunt alien with mechanical mandibles, spread his arms. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's exclusive offering. A genuine Luminari, verified and certified by the Syndicate. 1 night of her company, no questions asked. Bidding starts at 100 credits. The room erupted with numbers. 100 became 2. 2 became 3. Jack stood in the back, watching the woman scan the crowd with barely concealed dread. She was terrified, not just of the room, but of something beyond it, like she knew exactly what awaited her after this one night. Jack didn't think. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was the look in her eyes. Maybe it was because he knew exactly what it felt like to lose everything and be at someone else's mercy. 300, someone shouted. Jack raised his hand. 400. Heads turned. Jack looked like he couldn't afford a cup of coffee, much less 400 credits. The announcer tilted his head. 400 from the human. Do I hear 5? Silence. Most in the room weren't here to spend serious money. They were here to watch. The announcer shrugged. Sold. To the human. The room chuckled as Jack was ushered forward to transfer the credits. The number in his account dropped to 2 digits. They handed him a key card to a small rental suite in the lower ring. The Luminari, her name wasn't given, was escorted to him by 2 guards. When the door closed behind them, she stood in the corner, rigid, eyes downcast. Jack scratched the back of his neck. Look, I'm not gonna hurt you. She glanced up, as if weighing the truth in his words. You paid, she said softly, her voice like music warped by static. What do you want? Nothing, Jack said. Except maybe for you to stop looking like you're about to be executed. Her brow furrowed. She didn't move closer. Humans always want something. Not tonight, Jack replied, pulling a small pack of ration bars from his bag. He tossed it to her. Hey, eat. She caught it with surprising grace, unwrapping it cautiously. The moment she bit into it, her shoulders relaxed a fraction. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke again. You are strange. Jack chuckled. Been told that before. She studied him, violet eyes narrowing. Why did you buy me? He hesitated. Because you looked like you didn't want to be here. Her lips parted, like she wanted to say more, but a flicker of fear crossed her face. She pressed her palm to her temple, wincing. Jack took a step closer. You okay? They will come, she said quietly. When the sun rises over Vero's prime, they will take me back. They never let stolen property go. Jack's jaw tightened. We'll see about that. Her gaze locked with his, uncertain, almost hopeful. For the first time that night, Jack realized this wasn't going to be just one night. One night of truth. The room was small, barely more than a bunk, a sink, and a flickering wall screen. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, boots still on, watching the alien girl in the corner. She'd eaten 2 ration bars without a word, her luminous eyes fixed on the door as if expecting it to burst open at any second. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the station's ventilation. You got a name? Jack asked. Her gaze shifted toward him, cautious. Serai. She said it like a secret, as though names had power. Serai? Jack repeated, testing the sound. I'm Jack. She inclined her head, the slightest nod. You are human. Jack smirked. Last I checked. Why? Is that a problem? Serai's lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Not a problem. Just unusual. Few humans come here without being desperate. Jack leaned back against the wall. Guess I fit the description. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And yet, you did not buy me for what they sell me for. Jack shrugged. Maybe I don't like the idea of someone being sold. That earned him a long, measuring look. You do not believe in ownership. Not of people, Jack said. Ships, sure. Tools, fine. But people? No. Serai tilted her head. The Syndicate believes otherwise. To them, I am property. Valuable property. Jack's jaw tightened. Yeah, well, they are not exactly famous for their moral compass. She looked down, her fingers brushing the edge of the glowing cuffs on her wrists. These are not just to bind my hands. They limit my mind. Jack frowned. What do you mean? I am Luminari, she said quietly. My kind. We speak in thoughts, not only words. We can sense intent, memory, sometimes shape thought itself. These cuffs silence me. They force my mind into obedience. Jack's stomach twisted. That's why you looked like an animal in a cage, she finished for him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. How long have you been here? Her gaze went distant. 3 cycles. Taken from my home, sold from ship to ship, until here. Jack could hear the weight in her voice. 3 cycles, 3 standard years, was a long time to live under someone else's control. They'll come for you in the morning, she continued. They always do. No matter where I am, the Syndicate finds me. Not if I get you out first, Jack said. Her expression didn't change. You cannot. You are one human, with no ship, no credits, and no power in this station. You are bought one night. That is all. Jack didn't answer immediately. He looked around the dingy room, at the peeling wall panels and the humming air vent. She was right. On paper, he had nothing. But humans weren't good at following the script. He leaned forward, voice low. Maybe I can't fight them head-on. But I've gotten out of worse situations than this. You just have to trust me. She studied him like she was reading more than his words. Maybe she was, even through the restraints. You believe you can do this? I don't believe, Jack said. I know. For the first time, her eyes softened. A thread of something, hope, maybe, passed between them. They talked until the station's chronometer ticked toward dawn. Jack told her about the Meridian, his lost ship, and the months of running cargo between ungoverned systems. He told her about the time a pirate captain tried to cheat him, only to find her own ship stranded because Jack had accidentally swapped her hyperdrive fuel with coolant. Serai listened intently, occasionally asking questions in her soft, almost musical voice. She never laughed outright, but a few times her lips curved just enough for Jack to count it. In return, she spoke of her home, an ocean world called Violun, where cities floated on silver waves and the night sky shimmered with 1,000 moons. She described the way her people linked thoughts in vast shared networks, weaving songs of memory and emotion. "Sounds like paradise," Jack said quietly. "It was," Serai replied. "Until the Hive War. We lost. Many died. Those who lived, scattered. Some were taken." Jack felt his fist clench. "That's when the Syndicate got you." "Yes. They cut me off from the link. The silence is worse than chains." Jack didn't know what to say to that. The idea of losing every connection, every familiar voice in your mind, it made his own loneliness feel small by comparison. The room dimmed as the station's artificial night cycle ended. Faint light seeped through the vents, a signal that the outer rings market would soon wake. Serai straightened suddenly, tension flashing across her face. "They are coming." Jack stood. "How do you know?" "I can feel them, even through the cuffs." He crossed to the small desk, grabbing his worn satchel. "Then we move now." Her eyes widened. "Where?" "Anywhere that's not here," Jack said. She hesitated, glancing at the door. "If they catch us, they will kill you." Jack smirked faintly. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried. He tapped the panel to kill the room lights, plunging them into shadow. "Stay close to me, and keep quiet." They slipped into the corridor, merging with the thin trickle of early morning workers heading toward the docks. Jack kept his pace casual, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the strap of his satchel. Serai stayed half a step behind, her head lowered. They made it 3 turns before Sarai's hand brushed his arm. "Two behind us. Syndicate guards." Jack didn't look back. "More coming." She paused. "Yes. Ahead." Jack's mind worked fast. They were boxed in. The straight path was death. That left one option, down. He spotted a maintenance hatch half hidden behind a vendor stall. Without slowing, he veered toward it, flipping the latch with a quick twist. The hatch swung open to reveal a ladder descending into darkness. "In," he whispered. Serai slipped inside first, her silver skin catching the faint light before vanishing into the shadows. Jack followed, pulling the hatch closed above them. The smell hit him first, oil, rust, and the faint metallic tang of recycled air. They were in the station's service tunnels. Serai looked back at him in the dim glow of his wristlight. "Where does this lead?" Jack grinned. "To the one thing the Syndicate doesn't control, garbage." Her brow furrowed. "Garbage?" "Yep. Trash chutes dump into the waste haulers in Dock 6. From there, we hitch a ride out of here." Serai blinked. "You are insane." Jack's grin widened. "You're not wrong." For the first time, she laughed, a soft, startled sound, like she hadn't done it in years. Jack decided right then he wanted to hear it again. The buyout. The maintenance tunnels of Vero's Prime spat them out into the lower dock district just as the station's main concourse roared to life. Cargo haulers rumbled overhead, their repulsors rattling the grates under Jack's boots. The air was thick with exhaust and the briny tang of recycled water from the station's filtration plants. Serai kept close, her silver skin drawing curious stares even in the dim light. Jack led her through the winding alleys until the Syndicate's banners were out of sight. Only then did he slow, pressing a hand to a wall to catch his breath. "They'll still be looking," Serai warned, her violet eyes scanning the crowds. "Yeah," Jack said, straightening. "Which is why we need to make this official." Her brow furrowed. "Official?" Jack started walking again. "I can't keep hiding you forever. The Syndicate will chase us to the edge of the galaxy unless we make it so you're not their property anymore." Her expression darkened. "You cannot just buy me." Jack looked over his shoulder. "No, but I can buy your freedom." They found the Syndicate's trade office on the mid-tier. Polished metal walls, bright lighting, and a receptionist with a too-smooth smile. It was a front, of course, behind the counter. Deals for stolen ships, contraband, and living beings were made every hour. The receptionist looked up as they approached. Welcome to the Threx Syndicate Trade Authority. How may we assist you? Her tone carried the faintest sneer when her eyes landed on Jack. I want to buy out a contract, Jack said, planting his hands on the counter. The woman arched a brow. And whose contract would that be? Jack jerked his head toward Serai. The receptionist's polite mask faltered for a second before she chuckled softly. Ah, the Luminary girl. I'm afraid she's not for long-term sale. Jack leaned in slightly. Everything's for sale. Question is, what's the price? Her smile widened in a way that wasn't friendly. For her? 10,000 credits. Jack's stomach sank. He had less than 20. That's robbery. The receptionist shrugged. You're free to file a complaint with station security. Oh, wait. We are the security. Jack didn't flinch. Fine. I'll get the money. She tapped a few keys. You have until end of cycle. Then the contract revotes and she's reassigned. Jack turned to Serai, speaking low. Stay here. Don't move. Her eyes narrowed. I will not. Trust me, he cut in. You want out? This is how. Jack spent the next 6 hours burning every contact he had. He pawned his last good jacket to a fence named Vrix. He traded a forged docking pass to a smuggler for a few hundred credits. He even pulled in a favor from a grizzled ex-Navy officer who still owed him for that incident on Selva's moon. By the time he staggered back into the Syndicate office, his satchel was heavier with coined chits and credit chips, but it was still short. The receptionist smirked. 10,000. Jack dropped his satchel on the counter. 8,000. Cash. Right now. She gave a theatrical sigh. I told you. That's 8,000, Jack interrupted, plus something you can't buy anywhere else. Her eyes narrowed. And what's that? Jack reached into his coat and slid a small, flat device across the counter. Imperial Navy bounty tag. Unregistered. Still active. Whoever's name is on it. Worth 100,000 in reward. The receptionist froze, her eyes flicking to the device. Where did you? Jack shrugged. You want it or not? A long pause. Then she swept the satchel and the tag into a drawer. Deal. She's yours. Permanently. Serai stood by the door as he turned toward her. The moment their eyes met, she read the truth without him saying a word. You gave them something dangerous, she said softly. Jack managed a tired grin. Maybe, but you're free now. Her brow furrowed. I am free, but you are not. They will want more from you. He shrugged. They can want all they like. They didn't linger. Jack led Serai to the docking bays, where he'd arranged to meet a contact who owed him a ship. What rolled out of the shadows was no prize. It was a rust-brown freighter with mismatched hull panels and scorch marks along her side. This, Jack announced, is the Rustwing. She's ugly, but she flies. Serai eyed the vessel. She looks sick. Yeah, Jack admitted. But she'll get us off this rock. They boarded quickly, Jack showing her the cramped interior. A single cockpit, a galley barely large enough for two, and a cargo hold that smelled faintly of engine coolant. Serai trailed her fingers along the wall. This is yours. Jack shook his head. Just borrowed. But once we're clear of the station, we can figure out where to go next. They didn't even make it out of docking before the trouble started. As Jack powered up the engines, warning lights flared across the console. The comm crackled, and a voice, cold and insectile, filled the cabin. Human, you have taken Syndicate property without proper authorization. Jack keyed the MIC funny. I just bought her fair and square. Your deal is void, the voice hissed. The Luminary is of strategic value. You will surrender her, or be destroyed. Jack cut the comm and muttered, guess they didn't like the bounty tag trick. Serai's hand gripped the back of his seat. They are sending ships. Jack glanced at the scanner, 3 blips, closing fast. Then we'd better go. The Rustwing's engines roared to life, vibrating through the deck plates. Jack coaxed her off the dock and into open space, weaving between cargo haulers and patrol craft. The Syndicate ships weren't big, but they were fast. Plasma bolts lanced past the cockpit, one striking close enough to rock the freighter. Jack gritted his teeth, hands dancing over the controls. Hold on. Serai closed her eyes, her expression tightening. Left, now. Jack yanked the yoke without hesitation. A bolt tore through the space where they'd been a heartbeat before. You can feel where they are going to shoot. Jack asked. Yes, but it is not precise, she said, her voice strained. Precise enough, Jack said, banking hard into an asteroid field. The Rustwing rattled as debris scraped the hull, but Jack threaded her through the gaps with practiced ease. Behind them, the Syndicate ships hesitated. Asteroids this dense were death for overconfident pilots. One ship tried to follow and was rewarded with a direct hit from a tumbling boulder. The others broke off, hanging at the edge of the field. Jack eased the throttle, letting the asteroids hide them. The console's threat indicators faded to green. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. And that's how you lose a tail. Serai looked at him for a long moment. You risked everything for me. Jack met her gaze. Yeah, guess I did. A flicker of something passed over her face, something that wasn't fear no more. Escaped through the stars. The asteroid field was their shield, but it wouldn't last. Jack knew the Syndicate would be waiting just outside, patient as vultures. They wanted Serai back, and they wouldn't care how much debris the Rustwing had between her and their guns. He floated the ship deeper into the field, the engines on minimal thrust to keep heat signatures low. Shards of rock tumbled past, some no larger than a fist, others the size of small moons. The field's shadows danced across the console, broken by the occasional glint of distant starlight. Serai stood behind his seat, hands gripping the backrest. They are not giving up, she said quietly. I know, Jack replied, eyes scanning the nav display. But if we play this right, we can make them think we're already gone. Her brow furrowed. How? Jack's fingers tapped the console. We ride the drift. Cut engines. Coast on the rocks until we find a big enough asteroid to hide behind. Then, when they sweep past, we burn the other way. Serai tilted her head, studying him. You think like a predator. Jack smirked. Nah, just a pilot who's been hunted before. They drifted in silence for nearly an hour. Serai's eyes stayed closed most of the time, her breathing even. Jack knew she was reaching outward with what little telepathy her cuffs allowed, tasting the minds around them like faint ripples on water. They are moving, she said suddenly. Slow, circling. Jack tightened his grip on the controls. Means they are looking for us. And it means we've got one shot to get out before they tighten the net. He spotted it, a massive chunk of rock ahead, riddled with tunnels and jagged ridges. Big enough to hide the Rustwing. He nudged the controls, guiding the freighter into a deep crevice. The asteroid swallowed them whole, and the ship's sensors dimmed as Jack powered down everything but life support. The cockpit fell into darkness. Only the faint red glow of the standby lights painted their faces. Serai leaned closer, voice low. And now? Now, Jack said, we wait. Minutes passed like hours. Twice, the scanner lit up faintly, Syndicate ships sweeping the field, their active scans brushing past the asteroid without locking on. The third time, Serai's eyes snapped open. They are leaving the field. To our braking formation. Jack's eyes narrowed, heading way toward the far rim. Jack grinned. Perfect. He powered up the Rustwing's engines, low and steady, not enough to spike their profile. Once they were clear of the asteroid's shadow, he throttled forward, threading them through the densest patch of debris he could find. The nav display beeped and elate. One Syndicate ship had turned back. They've seen us, Serai said sharply. Jack's hands danced over the controls. Then let's make this interesting. The Rustwing shot out of the asteroid field like a dart, hull shuddering from the sudden acceleration. The pursuing ship closed fast, plasma bolts streaking past them. Jack banked hard, skimming the edge of a rotating rock the size of a stadium. The Syndicate pilot followed, too closely. Jack rolled the ship sharply, letting a protruding spire of rock clip the enemy's wing. The ship spun off course, vanishing behind the asteroid. Serai stared at him, eyes wide. You did that on purpose. Jack flashed a grin. Instinct. They cleared the asteroid field, but Jack knew the victory was temporary. The remaining Syndicate ships were regrouping, and their next move would be smarter. We need a real way to shake them, Jack said. Something they can't follow us through. Serai hesitated, then touched the side of her head. There's a place. Dangerous. But they will not go there. Jack arched a brow. Define dangerous. She met his gaze evenly. A gravity storm. Near the veil's edge. Space folds and twists. Ships vanish. Jack's smile was quick and reckless. Sound perfect. The route to the gravity storm was rough, uncharted lanes, dust clouds that interfered with senses, and more than a few close calls with drifting wrecks. Serai proved invaluable, warning him of hazards before they appeared on the scanner. At one point, as they skimmed the edge of a gas cloud, she said quietly, "I can feel your thoughts, even through the cuffs. They are loud." Jack chuckled. "Sorry. Guess humans aren't great at subtle." She tilted her head. "No, but they are determined." Jack glanced at her. That a compliment? Her lips curved faintly. Perhaps. By the time the gravity storm came into view, it was like staring into the maw of a black hole, but stranger. Stars bent around it in impossible arcs, light stretching into threads before snapping away. Space itself seemed to ripple, and Jack's instruments went wild, readings spiking and crashing in seconds. "This is where they won't follow?" Jack asked. Serai nodded. "They fear what they cannot control." Jack tightened his harness. "Good thing I don't share that problem." The rust-winged dove into the storm. Instantly, the ship bucked and rattled, alarms screaming. Gravity shifted wildly, making the deck lurch beneath their feet. Jack fought the controls, adjusting thrusters by instinct, weaving through currents of warped space that could crush them if he made one wrong move. Serai braced herself, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "I can see the way through," she said, voice strained. "Left, now." Jack obeyed without question, and a moment later they slipped past a swirling vortex that would have shredded their hull. Behind them, a faint blip appeared on the scanner, the Syndicate's last pursuit ship. It edged toward the storm's boundary, then stopped. "They are not coming in," Jack said. "They would be fools to try," Serai replied. Jack smirked. "Guess that makes us the fools, then." After what felt like hours, the turbulence eased. The rustwing drifted out of the storm's far side into calm, unmarked space. Jack leaned back, muscles aching from the fight with the controls. Serai's shoulders relaxed for the first time since Vero's prime. "We are free, for now." Jack nodded. "For now. But the Syndicate doesn't forgive or forget." She studied him for a long moment. "Why do you do this, Jack Carter? Risk so much for me." Jack met her gaze. "Because you deserve the choice to decide where you go. And because I hate bullies." Something softened in her expression, and for the first time, she reached out, resting her hand lightly on his arm. "Then perhaps I chose well." The chains in her mind. They found safe harbor in a place that barely counted as one, Redwater Station, a hollowed-out asteroid far from any established lanes. From the outside, it looked like a chunk of dead rock. Inside, it was a warren of mismatched habitats lit by flickering lamps and powered by stolen reactors. Docking fees were paid in favors, fuel was half-watered, and everyone walked with one hand near their weapon. It was the kind of place where people disappeared, sometimes willingly, sometimes not. Jack brought the rustwing in slow, not wanting to draw attention. The Syndicate hadn't followed them through the gravity storm, but he knew it was only a matter of time before word of a human with a luminary made its way to the wrong ears. Serai followed him down the boarding ramp, her violet eyes darting over the market's makeshift stalls and patched-together walls. The air smelled faintly of rust and boiled algae. "This is not pleasant," she murmured. Jack smirked. "Not supposed to be. The rougher the place, the less people ask questions." Their first stop was a backroom clinic run by a woman named Mora, a medic who had once been a combat surgeon for the Trillian Navy. She owed Jack for smuggling her out of a war zone years ago, and he was calling in the favor now. Mora was short, wiry, and perpetually chewing on some bitter-smelling root. She gave Serai a quick, assessing look before pulling Jack aside. "What's the deal?" she asked in a low voice. Jack glanced toward Serai, who was quietly studying the equipment on the shelves. "She's wearing neural restraints. I need to know if they can be removed." Mora's eyes narrowed. "Luminari." "Yeah." Mora swore under her breath. "Those restraints aren't just cuffs, Jack. They are buried deep. I've seen what happens when you try to crack them without the right override key." Jack's gut tightened. "What happens?" "They seize up, sometimes die instantly, sometimes just lose themselves. Brains aren't meant to be rewired like that. Jack glanced back at Serai. She'd be nothing but controlled, graceful, except when she laughed back in the tunnels. He wasn't sure which version of her was the real one. Maybe neither. Mora examined the cuffs anyway, running a handheld scanner over them. The readout displayed a mess of alien glyphs and pulsing lines. They are key to respond to one thing: ownership, Mora said finally. Whoever is registered as a legal controller, she's bound to obey. She might push against it, but the deeper programming will always pull her back. Serai's gaze was steady, but her voice was low. That is why I say I am not free. My choices are not truly mine. Jack felt something hot rise in his chest. That's slavery, no matter what the Syndicate calls it. Mora shrugged. Call it what you like. Doesn't change the fact that removing them's a gamble, and the odds aren't in your favor. Jack looked at Serai. If there's a chance, do you want to take it? Her eyes searched his for a long moment before she answered. Yes, even if it kills me. Better to die as myself than live as theirs. Jack nodded slowly. Then we'll find a way. Mora shook her head. Not here. I don't have the tools. But, she hesitated. There's a derelict research lab out on Tiro's moon. Old, abandoned since the war. The kind of place nobody visits unless they have to. If the equipment's still there, you might find an AI capable of decoding those restraints. Jack frowned. And the catch? Mora smirked. The moon's freezing, and the lab's probably still crawling with whatever automated security was left behind. So, fun trip. Jack sighed. Sounds about right. They left the clinic with little more than a set of cold weather gear and vague directions. On the walk back to the Rust Wing, Serai was quiet until they reached the docking ramp. You are certain you wish to do this? She asked. Jack stopped halfway up the ramp, turning to face her. I'm not in the habit of leaving friends chained up, mentally or otherwise. Her brow furrowed. Friends. She seemed to roll the word around in her mind, as if testing it for weight. Yeah, Jack said simply. Unless you'd rather I call you cargo like the Syndicate. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. Friends is acceptable. That night, the Rust Wing floated in a cold stretch of space just outside Redwater's sensor range. Jack sat in the cockpit, half watching the nav computer plot a course to Tiros. Serai sat in the co-pilot's chair, her gaze distant. You're thinking about home, Jack said. She didn't deny it. Violun, the Silver Seas, the Link. I dream of them, but when I wake, they fade. Jack leaned back. If we get those cuffs off, what happens then? Serai looked at him, her expression unreadable. I do not know. Perhaps I go home. Perhaps there is no home left to return to. But at least, it will be my choice. Jack nodded. Then that's what we're aiming for. She studied him for a moment longer before speaking again. Humans are strange. You risk much for those you barely know. Maybe, Jack said with a faint grin. But sometimes that's the only way to make friends worth keeping. Her eyes softened at that. She turned back toward the viewport, the stars reflected in her gaze. Before either of them could say more, the Rust Wing's proximity alarm went off, a sharp, urgent tone that cut through the quiet. Jack's hands flew to the controls, bringing up the sensor feed. A single contact was approaching fast. No transponder code. Looks like we've got company, Jack muttered. Serai's eyes narrowed. Syndicate. Could be, Jack said, powering up the engines. Or just another scavenger looking to make a quick score. The ship closed in. Whoever it was, they weren't slowing down. Jack keyed the unidentified vessel. You're on a collision course. Alter your. Static hissed in response, followed by a burst of alien speech neither of them recognized. Serai's hand tightened on the armrest. They are not here to talk. Jack's jaw set. Figures. He hit the throttle, angling the Rust Wing toward open space. Buckle up. Redwater just stopped being safe. The ship rattled as they broke free of the station's shadow. Ahead, the black expanse of space stretched toward Tiro's moon. Behind, the mystery ship gave chase. Jack grinned despite himself. Guess we start the fun early. Breaking the shackles. The Rust Wing punched through Tiro's moon's thin atmosphere, its hull groaning against the cold. The place was little more than a frozen rock lit by the pale shimmer of its planet's light. The abandoned research lab sat half-buried in the ice, its jagged silhouette jutting up like broken teeth. Jack guided the ship down on manual, fighting wind shear. "Doesn't look like anyone's been here in a decade," he said. Serai, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, was scanning the horizon. "The architecture, it is not Syndicate. Old Confederacy style. Cold, efficient. They built places to last forever, even if no one came back." "Guess we're about to test that theory," Jack said, setting the Rustwing down in a sheltered crater 100 meters from the main structure. The moment they stepped outside, the cold bit through their suits. Tyros wasn't just cold, it was the kind of cold that seemed to eat at your bones. Snow crunched under their boots, and their breath crystallized in the air. They approached the lab through a snow-choked access tunnel. The outer airlock still functioned, though its control panel flickered weakly. Jack pried the door open with a crowbar from the ship, and they stepped inside. The interior was pitch dark except for the pale glow of emergency strips. Frost coated the walls. A fine mist hung in the air, glittering in their helmet lights. "Atmosphere's thin but breathable," Jack said after a quick check. He pulled off his helmet, shaking out the cold. "Let's see if we can get the lights on." Serai moved with a kind of practiced caution, scanning every doorway as if expecting trouble. Places like this, they rarely sleep quietly. They found the main control room 2 levels down. Consoles lay dormant under layers of frost. Jack brushed one off and pulled out a portable power cell. After a few minutes of coaxing, the lights stuttered on with a dull hum. Holo displays flickered to life, projecting ghostly blue symbols into the air. "Looks like we've got an AI core still running in low power," Jack said. "If the Syndicate didn't strip it, it might have the tools we need." Serai stepped closer, her eyes on the alien glyphs. "This language, it is related to mine. Not the same, but close enough I can interpret." Jack gave her the chair. "Be my guest." She began inputting commands, her fingers moving with precise speed. The AI's voice, filtered through static, filled the room. It was female in tone, but cold and mechanical. "Identify purpose of access." Serai answered in the ancient dialect, explaining their need to unlock neural restraints. The AI paused, processing. "Authorization requires proof of ownership." Jack swore under his breath. "Figures. Even a dead lab wants to make sure the slave stays a slave." Serai's voice grew sharper. "I will not authorize ownership. There must be another way." The AI's tone did not change. "Alternative, override via manual data key. Warning, override may cause cognitive failure or death in subject." Jack looked at her. "That's the gamble Mora warned us about." Serai met his gaze without flinching. "I accept." The override terminal was in the secure wing, of course. That meant cutting through blast doors and navigating whatever automated defenses had survived the decades. They found the first of those defenses halfway there. A sentry drone, its once polished chassis now dulled with frost, powered up with a whining hum as they approached. "Contact!" Jack shouted, diving for cover as the drone spat a burst of blue plasma. The beam scorched the wall where he'd been standing. Serai moved in a blur, using the frozen floor to slide under the drone's fire. Her alien reflexes were unnerving, fluid, precise. She drove a scavenged metal rod up into its core, and the machine spasmed before collapsing in a hiss of coolant. Jack stared for a moment, then gave a low whistle. "Remind me not to argue with you." Her expression was unreadable. "You will lose." They pressed on, disabling 2 more drones along the way. By the time they reached the override terminal, Jack's breath was coming in sharp bursts. The room was a sealed chamber, dominated by a cylindrical interface covered in glowing filaments. Serai approached it slowly. "This is old, but powerful. The AI will attempt to repair my mind while breaking the restraints. If it fails, there will be nothing left to repair." Jack stepped up beside her. "Then it won't fail. I'll make sure of it." She gave him a small nod, trust, quiet and unspoken. The process began when she placed her hands on the interface. The restraints on her wrists lit up, casting a harsh red glow across the room. The AI's voice filled the air again. "Override initiated. Warning, Neural instability detected. Serai's breath quickened. Her eyes fluttered shut, and her body trembled. Jack saw her knees start to buckle and moved to steady her, but she shook her head sharply. I must do this. Sparks danced across the restraints, the metal hissing with heat. Jack's own pulse pounded in his ears. The AI's voice counted down, 70% complete. Neural variance critical, 90% complete. Serai gasped, a sharp, almost painful sound, and then the cuff split open with a metallic snap. The red light died. For a long moment, she stood still, her breathing ragged. Jack waited, afraid to speak. Then she opened her eyes. The violet glow in them was brighter, sharper than before. It is gone, she whispered. The weight, the leash, gone. Jack felt something loosen in his chest. Welcome back, Serai. She looked at him for a long moment before saying quietly, Now, I am truly myself. They didn't have much time to savor the moment. The AI's voice cut in again, urgent this time. Warning, external signal detected. Multiple inbound vessels. Identification. Syndicate. Jack swore. Of course they'd show up now. He grabbed her arm. We've got to move. They are not here for tea. Serai's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile, but there was fire in her eyes. Then let us show them what it means when chains are broken. They ran, the sound of Syndicate gunships growing louder through the frozen walls. And for the first time since they'd met, Jack realized he wasn't just helping her survive anymore. They were about to fight side by side. The price of forever. The Rustwing's engines were already cycling when Jack and Serai sprinted through the crater, Syndicate gunships breaking the clouds above. Searchlights swept over the ice, beams cutting through the darkness like knives. Jack slammed the cargo ramp control. Get inside. Serai didn't move. She stood in the open, eyes fixed on the approaching ships. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but she was still, too still. Serai. Jack barked. Her voice was calm. If we flee now, they will follow us across the system. They will hunt you until you are dead and take me again. She turned to him. We must end it here. 3 Syndicate dropships hit the surface with enough force to shake the ground. Hatches slid open, and armored soldiers poured out, sleek black exosuits, visors glowing crimson. Their rifles hummed with charged plasma. Jack gritted his teeth. You got a plan? Yes. Her gaze locked on the lead dropship. We kill the command relay. Without it, their coordination collapses. Jack's grin was sharp. I like the sound of that. They moved fast. The first squad opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling through the air. Jack ducked behind an ice outcrop, returning fire with his modified carbine. He wasn't aiming to kill, at least not at first. He shot at joints, sensors, exposed tubing. Disable, then move. Serai was something else entirely. Freed from the restraints, she moved like a storm, too fast to track, her strikes precise and final. A rifle was ripped from one soldier's hands before he even realized she was there. Another fell with his helmet shattered by a palm strike. Jack's thoughts flickered to the first night they'd met. How she'd seemed subdued, almost fragile. Now she was everything the Syndicate had tried to suppress, and more. They pushed toward the lead dropship. Jack tossed a thermal charge into a cluster of soldiers, ducking the blast as heat washed over him. Serai vaulted onto the dropship's wing, prying open a maintenance hatch with her bare hands. Inside, she tore through wiring, hunting for the control core. Got company. Jack shouted, firing at an advancing squad. I require 30 seconds, she called back. You've got 10. A Syndicate officer, taller, heavier armor, stepped through the smoke, plasma sword igniting with a low hum. Jack fired twice. The shot splashed harmlessly off the officer's shield. The blade swung, missing Jack's head by inches. He backpedaled, feeling the heat of it sear the air. Serai, he yelled. The officer raised the sword for a killing strike, then stiffened, a violet glowing hand bursting through his chest plate from behind. Serai shoved the body aside and leapt down beside Jack. The core is destroyed. Their command net is gone. As if on cue, the Syndicate troops faltered. Their formations broke, their fire becoming erratic. Jack grinned. That's our cue to leave. They sprinted for the Rust Wing, weaving through disoriented soldiers. Plasma bolts hissed past, but none hit home. Jack fired one last burst over his shoulder before diving up the cargo ramp. Serai followed, slamming the control to seal it shut. "Hold on!" Jack shouted, racing to the cockpit. The Rust Wing roared to life, engines melting the snow beneath it. The ship clawed into the sky, buffeted by wind and stray plasma fire. On the horizon, Syndicate ships scrambled to intercept, but without coordination, they were too slow. Jack punched them into high burn, engines screaming as they broke atmosphere. Only when they were in the cold silence of space did Jack finally lean back, lungs burning. "Well," he panted, "that was not how I planned my night." Serai stood behind him, watching the stars slide past. "You risked everything." He glanced back at her. "So did you." She stepped closer, her expression softer now. "You bought me for one night, Jack. You could have walked away, but you did not." Jack looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't buy you, Serai. I bought time. Time to figure out that you were worth more than any credit in the galaxy." Her gaze held his, unblinking. "And now," he said, "you're free. What you do with that freedom is up to you." There was a long silence. Then I choose to stay." Jack tried to smirk, but it came out as something closer to relief. "Guess that means I'm buying the next round of drinks." She tilted her head. "On one condition." "Yeah." Her eyes glinted. "We make them regret ever chasing us." The Rust Wing drifted into the black, Syndicate signals fading behind them. Ahead lay the scattered lights of distant stations, the promise of hidden worlds, and a future neither of them could have imagined when their deal had been struck. Jack's hands tightened on the controls. "Forever so long time, Serai." Her voice was quiet, but certain. "Good. We have much to do." The stars stretched ahead as the Rust Wing jumped to FTL, carrying them into the unknown, together.